Shalom. So thank you, Lior, for the opportunity, and I'm going to try and answer your question from a totally different angle. The Piyut project, and I'm soon going to take you for a short tour in, has set out to utilize modern technology so that contemporary Jews can connect with and give life to an ancient Jewish heritage, the art and practice of piyutim. Since I'm not sure all of you know exactly what I'm talking about, so let's start from a short definition. What is piyut? So piyutim are the sacred poems that were written continuously over the past 2,000 years. This is where the finest poetry and the finest music meets prayer, but is it actually much more than that? Since piyutim are the soundtrack of Jewish life, used throughout the year and life cycle in synagogues and outside them, within families and festive communal gatherings, as part of rituals and ceremonies, singing brings people together and connects them to something that is greater than them. You can already understand that the challenge of working with the internet in our topic, which is emotion, singing, music, is not a very easy starting point. So as I said, piyutim are therefore a significant component of Jewish identity, and they come in a large variety of colors and voices. Soon we'll hear some. So historically, it's important to understand that they evolved in Jewish communities around the world, each community creating its own particular adaptation or cultural version. Continuously, or consequently from that, we now have a legacy that is nothing short than a great treasure, and it opens gates to many different dimensions of Jewish identity. Yet, it is hardly accessible. I'm sure not most of you, what you're going to hear now is going to be quite new. So moreover, since the knowledge is not always documented, many of these beautiful traditions now exist only in memories of small number of people, none of whom are very young. So these traditions are in danger of being lost forever. This is also important to understand regarding what you're doing. We want to make it accessible. At the same time, we want to save them, since your grandfather maybe is holding a very unique tradition in his mind or in his memory, and maybe he's one of the only people that knows the specific tradition. So, our challenge is basically a simple one: to rescue the piyutim traditions and make them accessible to everyone in a friendly and relevant way. We wanted to bring to life the knowledge and wisdom of past generations and to create continuity between them and the next era of Jewish identity, since music in general, and piyutim in particular, have the power to cross culture and spiritual borders and to become part of the Jewish public domain. That is what we wanted to do. And one of the main tools we have decided to start with is the internet. So now let's enter for a short tour to the website, Invitation to Piyut website. You're looking at the homepage. It's a bit hard to see with the colors, but you're invited to afterwards check it by yourselves. Just write Piyut in Google and it'll be the first one that comes up. So the website, as was mentioned before, is created in this Ronit Center for the Advancements of Web-Based Learning and supported by the Avichai Foundation. It was launched in 2005. We structured a place for each of the different Jewish traditions. A place that was respectful for each tradition, maintaining a delicate balance between East and West, ancient and contemporary, academic and popular, creating an atmosphere for continuity and creativity. And again, as I mentioned before, it's not easy to create an experience, an emotional experience regarding the words and the music and the song and the community when we're speaking about internet. It's almost contradiction. Me, myself, when I entered this project, it was about 5 years ago, it totally didn't come from the internet environment at all. So, I want to show you an example of the one piyut we have at this site. There are around 800 piyutim at the moment, and it's not only text, it's much more than that. And most Jewish people know the piyut of Yedid Nefesh. It's quite popular. You see at the site, just a minute. The Piyut Yedid Nefesh that was written in Tzfat about 500 years ago is one of the most popular piyutim, but most of the people don't know that it exists maybe in more than 40 different renditions all around the world. And each rendition opens a gate to a culture. Because you can see the piyut in this case, and this is just part of the list. It exists in Ashkenaz, in the Western cultures, in Babylon, Iraqi, India, in Morocco, in Sfarad, in Tunisia, in Yemen. This is just a short list of what you can see in the site for this specific piyut. You go in, and this is more or less what you can start hearing. This is from Tunisia, if you can't read. So this is, if you want to hear the rest, it's all there. All the recordings at the site are full recordings from beginning to end. Even some of them are commercial. Excuse me, I'll answer it in the end. So this example from Tunis, which represents for me a tradition that is, I can imagine that most of you have never heard, or even people that are roots are in Tunisia, most of them not necessarily know that this tradition exists. It is one of the great masters of tradition that you hear here, of this Tunisian tradition. And it's one interpretation of this beautiful poem that was, the author declared it as a supplication for union and the desire for love. So in order to get closer to the piyut, in the site you can read about the text that you just heard. A lot of other information is set around it, like, for example, who's the author, where is this piyut used, a bit of a background about the musical tradition, about sometimes we have notes, and all these different tools can get you closer and make something which can seem far away a bit more accessible. Let's hear another example. This is more known. You can join it if you want. This was Shira Chadasha community in Jerusalem. This is a more known example. This maybe represents this case. And but you can hear, besides their interpretation, to the same melody, to the same rendition, you can hear different interpretations in this side. So we're talking one example, maybe 30 different renditions at the site at this moment, and maybe 50 or more recordings, just for one example, and a lot of information around that, as I said. This melody, I learned myself from the site, from the voice of Rabbi Chaim Lug, which is one of the great contemporary Paitanim that live today. It goes more or less like this. Yedid nefesh aveh mishuch avdach el retzonach and it goes on. For me, I mean, this is an example of something that I didn't grow up on. I mean, my parents, my grandmother, from one side came from Baghdad, Iraq, the other side came from the United States or Eastern Europe. But when through my music studies and through my exploration of Jewish prayer and my identity, in a way, I reached out to these treasures of piyutim. Slowly, I feel they become part of my home. And there's, I mean, you know, when this can be proved, when you have a child and you try to move on what you know to them, and I find myself moving on traditions that I didn't necessarily grew up on or heard in my childhood, but now have become part of my tradition in a way, or my life. I think this, in ways, is something that can be taken out to a great challenge in new Jewish identity, taking from this knowledge and creating something alive from that. So just one more thing I want to show before I close. What we did in the last year is launched a platform we call Shituf Piyut, Share a Piyut. This is where people can build their own personal sites, upload recordings, videos, notes, and more. And within a year, close to 100 sites were built. That's a lot in this specific topic. Much more than what we imagined, and more than 1,200 recordings were uploaded. We have beautiful examples, for example, grandchildren that built sites to upload recordings of their grandparents, and in a way traditions that people are now living in different parts of the world and they hold the same like common family roots, can communicate and create this continuity. The example you see here is the site of a Paitan Chazan by the name of Yitzchak Nahari. He lives in the town of Yavne and practices a unique Yemenite tradition. So far, he has uploaded more than 100 high-quality recordings to his site, and he follows the year cycle. For example, before Rosh Hashanah, he was uploading piyutim for Rosh Hashanah, and before Tisha B'Av, and etc. And like him, for example, before Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, we're receiving many different recordings from the different sites. And it was beautiful to see how people are reacting to that and like giving their partners maybe or information that's going to be relevant for the next week. So Shituf Piyut is a way to reach out and access private, family, community traditions and more. I think it's a wonderful example of how to utilize modern internet technology to create a wide circle of users that are also partners that help us preserve our heritage and bring it into the public, into the Jewish public domain. An important fact regarding partnership and influences of the site, and then we're getting to this part where we see how this first stage, anyway, in my belief, the internet, of course, the power that the site has, it's just the first stage. We established in Jerusalem a youth festival 2 years ago, and this is in continuation to what you can see almost every big Israeli rock star in the last years produced and released a piyut or piyutim or a Jewish song CD. This is something that wasn't here 5 years ago, and a lot of these examples have a great connection to the site. I know of many examples of well-known rock singers that took at least half of the CD from materials they heard in the site. And of course, we're very happy that that's happening. That's one of the things we hope to happen. And it comes back to the site in a way that these recordings now can be heard. So the continuity happens. Let's just end in some facts and figures. In the site at the moment there are more than 70 traditions, 200 poets, around 800 piyutim, and around 4,000 recordings. 800,000 users annually from more than 50 countries. And the site is mainly in Hebrew. So our future plans actually are to complete, or at least upload most of the major repertoire of the piyut traditions to the site, to build gates and bridges that it can reach mainly the young generations, to put the site in 5 languages, like Moshe said, like the Jewish Agency's information is up there in 5 languages. I think this should be relevant also for our site. Now it's a bit in English and mainly in Hebrew, but we're hoping it could also become in French and Russian and Spanish. And as I said, sharing traditions and connecting people to take forward this platform that allows users to upload their material and to create connections with others around the world. To move from the internet, from the virtual, into action that happens in ceremonies, in rituals.